Hello and welcome back. It's another wonderful Thursday evening. My kids have just gone up to bed, so hopefully it won't be too much yelling and stuff as they're starting to settle down, but I have a little time again to try and work on this and record something for you. Before I begin, this is the part of the show where I go through and make a whole bunch of corrections because while I'm recording, I sometimes forget things. I sometimes get locked into specific trains of thoughts or words or things, and they're not always correct. So, as soon as I stopped recording, a whole bunch of things triggered in my head, and it's like, oh, I was saying that wrong. Right? So, quick notes. First, I said Adam was not a name I have heard recently, and as soon as I stopped, it's like, oh yeah, except for my friend Adam. And my other friend Adam, who I had lunch with, and my other friend Adam, and my kids' three friends Adam, and the other Adam. I hear Adam all the time, and for some reason it wasn't triggering. Like in the moment when I was working on the names, I was drawing a blank, and I could not find a person I could think of in my recent life that was associated with the name Adam. But as soon as I stopped recording, the flood of images of faces and friends and connections named Adam all came in, so I was very much mistaken there. But despite that, I'm still going to probably go with the name Adam for the main character. Next thing. I had a couple of quick notes. Oh, yeah. I kept using the word rural when I meant to use the word urban, and I don't know why I got locked into that word, but rural means more out in the countryside, urban means more in the cities. So when I was talking about the stream during the whole last video, I was meaning it as it had less crawdads and stuff because it was more urban, because there were a lot of folks really close together, a lot of stuff being dumped into the streams, making it hard for the wildlife to survive first off, but then a lot of people just there and pulling things out of the stream, so it didn't have a chance to get really populated with a lot of crawfish. So it's kind of like our stream over here where there are crawfish in there, but they're really sparse. Anyway, those were a couple of notes that I had that I wanted to bring up just at the beginning while my brain's still working. If I start getting into a cycle of saying something that's wrong and I catch myself, I'll try and bring it up in the next video. If you notice something that doesn't sound quite right, just like, well, he's using this word, but he's not using it correctly. It could just be that in the panic of a moment of me trying to record and get stuff down, my brain's locking onto a term incorrectly and trying to do that. So, feel free in the comments to point those out so that I can, make a note in the next video to let you know where I've made a mistake. Beyond that... Oh, okay. And a couple quick notes. Like as soon as I finished this, then my brain started working once I got away from it and had a chance to rest, which often happens for me in writing. When I'm writing something, I'll get something down, and then immediately afterwards I'll go, oh, let me go back to it, because now that I've taken a moment of rest and break from it, now my brain's able to fix things. So first thing, right here off the bat, I want this to be a little bit more impactful. So Jerome's headless corpse rose and began to pursue Esther and Fred. I also, down here with the, I meant to say fawn, and I put doe. So let me see where that's at. Sorry, I'm just trying to find that here. Okay, so Lydia and Jeff, and that is the doe and the buck, and their new baby fawn, rather than baby doe, I'll just do fawn. The new fawn that he hadn't named yet. Okay, I think I had one more note that I will double check here. Nope, I think that's all I had for right now. So let me jump straight into working. So I'm going to start once again by reading what I've got so far, because that's going to help me get into the writing mindset. And when you're writing, it's a good thing to do. If you're writing larger format, if you're doing a full book, I wouldn't recommend starting your book from the beginning and reading through. But if you're partway through a section, like a chapter or something, because you've had to break it off partway through, then it's good to go back and at least read the start of the chapter. When I'm working in a larger book, I tend to at least get through a chapter at a time. Like I'll knock out a full chapter in a session before I take a break and move on to the next thing. But there are times where I do have to stop in the middle. Something comes up with my family, and then I come back and I'm kind of lost. So it helps to read through. The other thing that I will do if I'm not doing or if I don't have something within a chapter to read, like a full section, is I will go back and read the notes of what is left. So I can just come down here and go, oh, his dad pulled him from the driveway or from home. So as I said, and I'm going to try and correct that. I'm noticing that with these videos more and more. When I'm talking live, I still use those occasionally, but not as much. But when I'm trying to record something, I still have nerves that come up when I'm trying to record stuff. And so I tend to use those catchphrases more of, like I just said, or things like that. So I'm going to try and work on those. But what I'll do when I'm writing long format is I will have the section that's for the chapter I'm going to write, and sometimes I'll just read that. But in this case, we do have a lot of the story, and so this will give me a feel also for the flow as well as what I still have left. So Jerome's headless corpse, or the Puff, it's still the placeholder title, but Jerome's headless corpse rose and began to pursue Esther and Fred. Adam watched in horror as his two friends climbed as fast as they could to get away. Tina, Greg, and Shanna moved towards Jerome, trying to stop him. They were more aggressive than Adam had ever seen them. Adam's heart ached for them. Only a week ago they were happy and living in peace and harmony. Then the Puff came. Seemingly innocuous, those closest to it began to change. Within a few days, Jonathan was gone, but his body kept moving as if controlled by remote. Where he was kind, peaceful, and lived only to make music before, he turned into a creature of nightmares, walking with a will that was not his own and becoming a host for strange white growths. He became aggressive in his attacks. The scariest part wasn't even the physical violence, but that even without actual contact, the Puff spread. Everyone in contact began to change, some becoming puppeted monsters themselves, and others acting in violence to protect and retreat. Now it seemed that all of his little friends would finally fall prey to this fungal form of zombification. Adam couldn't take it anymore. He was feeling so sad and sorry for the loss of his friends that he had to sit up and back away from the anthill. Still watching the ants trying to fend off what was left of Jerome the cicada's body, he was watching the now familiar Puff escape the fungus on the corpse and land on their carapaces. Esther, Fred, and many others, recognizing the danger, were busy pulling debris to block the entrances to the anthill, leaving the most heroic outside to face their doom. He could see his family in the conflict. That would explain things since the Easter egg hunt. The Puff must be getting them, too. Dad said that Uncle Solomon was a mindless and uncaring oaf. Maybe he had become a zombie. Adam's mind spiraled. He couldn't see his cousins anymore, and everyone was on edge. Every time the phone rang lately, it was treated like air raid sirens were sounding. He looked at the anthill one more time. The conflict was too much. Adam stood up, walked back from the back fence line, and sat down on a chair by the fire pit. He practiced his breathing that he had been learning by watching his parents after their stressful interactions lately. And then he looked around. His brow was dripping salt and his shirt was soaked. He would love to go to the pool, but nobody could drive him today. Instead, he watched as Patrick and Michelle, two of the chipmunks that had moved on into his backyard last fall, ran around after each other along the fences and over the garden beds. He could see the hole where Chuck, one of the neighborhood rabbits, had dug before spying Adam and running back over to Mrs. Moncito's more open backyard. By the way, sometimes with names, I'm going to jump in here. Sometimes with names, as I'm writing, I'll have parts of names that I do recognize pop into my head in shortened forms or other things. And I'll often just let them run because then it creates new names that may or may not necessarily be related to somebody. So Montecito is an actual name. Moncito, I don't believe is. It might be someplace, but it just felt right. And so I left it in there. So for all of you that are like going crazy over the spelling, like, no, that should be Montecito. That's not the purpose. It's just to have a name that fits in there. So I'm just going with Moncito. Anyway. Mom, can I come into play now? Said Adam at the back door. No, came his mother's voice. Get a drink from the hose and go find some friends to play with if you're bored. Adam made a face and said, fine, before shutting the door and stomping off. He opened the side gate and walked out to the sidewalk and down to the stream by the neighborhood garden. On his way, he scared Lydia, Jeff, and the new fawn that he hadn't named yet. You're not supposed to eat from the garden, called Adam. Old man Sumner will get angry again if you do. Adam looked up because of the movement and noise as a medium-sized something hit the stream, sending up a splash. Why are you talking to deer? Called Sadhu through splutters. Why did you fall in water? Asked Adam, running up to the bank. Trying to grab a crawdad, and your talking made me lose balance. You get any yet? Look in the bucket, said Sadhu, a jagged grin spreading wide as he stepped out of the water. There were 5 inside. Adam's best record was 3 in one go, and that was using hot dog bits as bait. Sadhu went back to fishing, and Adam took a stick to play with the crawdads. They looked an awful lot like some of the bugs he had been playing with earlier, and his mind went back to his insect friends. I wonder if these will get taken over by the puff too, said Adam. The what? Asked Sadhu. The puff, repeated Adam. The thing that's been turning all the cicadas and ants in my backyard into zombies. You got zombies? Said Sadhu, moving over to sit by Adam. So cool. How did you get zombies? It's not cool, said Adam. He was horrified at the thought. Sadhu just didn't know. He hadn't seen them. It was horrible and somehow inevitable. It just spread and didn't care about who it affected. Adam did his best to explain the zombie situation to Sadhu, expecting a change. All that happened was that Sadhu got more and more excited, and Adam knew that for the next few weeks they would end up pretending to be zombies. They continued to talk and play until Adam saw his father's car go by on the main road. Okay, so that's where we got in the last session. So what we have for the outline so far, though, for the rest of it, is that he sees his dad pull into the driveway from work and runs home. We have a moment where we see his family dynamic. They have dinner. We meet mom and the 2 siblings and get the fun with some dark undertones, bringing back the issue that was introduced at the beginning of the story. Before bed, his dad is busy with work. His mom is trying to get the baby down. So, by the way, with the 2 siblings, I need to make a quick note here. One of them is a baby, just so I don't forget and, write up 2 older siblings and then get down to the baby part and go, I forgot. Okay, so you need to get the baby down. And he, in fear, tries to approach his father. He initially avoids his dad and gets a curt response and leaves still confused and unfulfilled. He has a moment of realizing that this is important and he needs to really get the help. So he reapproaches his dad more forcefully. And his father, although frustrated at first, stops and has a connective and caring moment. They talk about zombies and the child's fear of zombie disease. Adams, I can stop saying the child. And Adams' fear of zombie disease spreading in the family. His father realizes that he has been sending the wrong messages to his children and making mistakes in his approach with his family. He corrects it, comes to an understanding with Adam, and sends his son to bed. Adam, I'm just going to write Adam here as well, just to make my life easier. Adam will, in happiness and transcendence, spy his father making a phone call to a relative, so probably his uncle up there, or whoever Uncle Solomon. So he's going to make a phone call to Uncle Solomon to repair the relationship, to cure the zombification, and fight against the puff or disease. And so we're going to have another opportunity for humor there as well, I hope. Okay, so jumping back to the writing. So I need to just get into this. There's a lot of things that I already want to change with the first 2 pages. But the point of the rough draft is to not do that. It's just to get content down so that I have things to work with as I move forward. So I'm going to give this a bit of a gap here, just so visually I can clearly see where I'm going, what I'm working on. All right, so they continued to play and talk and play until Adam saw his father's car go by on the main road. My old school double space, which once again I'll clean up during a later pass. Sorry, I need to look at the paragraph before because I lost the flow as I was going to the outline. I was going to do a quick little conversation or goodbye with Sadhu. When I was early in my writing, I would always try and fill in all the details. Like, okay, I can't just have him go home. I have to have him say goodbye to Sadhu first. And I need to have him run up to the road and then down to the corner and then down around the section to get... It made my writing much better when I started taking things out and assumed that the reader would follow along. It makes it more concise. It gets me more to the point to where I need to be in the story and the action. So if it's not going to add to the emotional drive of the story, if it's not going to add details that become pertinent or significant, there's a lot of times where you can leave things out. Now, if you read through or if you have your test readers go through, and I'm sorry, I keep looking down at the screen, but I should look up there at the camera. But if you have your test readers go through and they're noticing there's a gap, they're like, oh, whoa, he's suddenly here. I need to understand how he got there. Then, by all means, go back, make those adjustments and corrections. But you'll find that you can actually leave out a lot more than you think you can because your audience will fill in a lot of it for you. So you give the illusion of parts of the story. You give the illusion of detail. You throw in just enough to get their brains active, and they'll fill in a lot of it for you. So let me move on here. So they continue to talk and play until Adam saw his father's car go by on the main road. By the time he got to the house, his father was already out, or was already shutting the garage door, and Adam had to run to around back to get inside. So it's just another weird thing. I'm in a neighborhood where a lot of people will still lock their front doors, but they leave the back doors open and sometimes side gates open, so the kids will run out onto the road and kind of run amok, but they're still paranoid about people breaking in, so they keep the front door locked. So anyway, so he can't just run inside the front door without ringing the doorbell or something, so he's going to run around through the open side gate and then to the back door. And let me check that just really fast, because he talked to his mom. So he opened the side gate, went out. Okay, so just making sure I'm still imagining the same way. So he's going to just go back in the way he came. So that part I am going to put. But the part that I cut out was him saying goodbye to Sadhu, running down the road and all that stuff. So I was like, hey, he got back to the house. His father's already shutting the garage door, so he ran around the side to get inside. By the time he got in, dinner was supposed to be on the table. And they should have been gathering to eat, and everyone should have been gathering to eat. Instead, there was the heavy silence that had plagued their home recently. Jennifer was keeping her head down as she finished once again, this is summertime and I don't want her necessarily to be doing homework, but I do want her kind of engaged. She's going to be a little bit older sister. Finished writing project she had been assigned for summer school. She continued a writing project she had been assigned over the summer. And I always hated those as a kid when it's like, hey, I'm supposed to be on summer break, but I have to have these 12 to 14 books read before I get back, and I have to write 3 reports, and some people feel that pain, others don't. In this case, Jennifer does. She was given a lot of stuff. She's maybe in like an AP English class or something for probably middle school at this age, kind of where I'm holding out for ages for the kids. So she had a writing project. All right, so Jennifer was keeping her head down. She continued to write a writing project she'd been assigned over the summer. Mother was still, and I'm just going to give them mother and father for right now. As I said, unless it becomes a reason to give them a name. This is how Adam's going to refer to his parents, like mom, dad, mother, father. So right there, mom, can I do it? Mother's voice. Because sometimes it's good to have a character name, and sometimes I don't need it. So in this case, I'm making an active choice to keep the parent names vague. So mother was not still, trying to calm down little Benny. We'll do Benny. Was trying to calm down little Benny as he had been fighting off a rash recently. Dad had taken up Dad quickly took off his coat. Yes, son. You want the mushroom light? Okay, go ask Colleen. See, this is the fun. Love you, son. By the way, those are my inspiration, and even when I'm writing parents, a big part of being a writer is being able to use the things around you. I spoke in the first video about reading a lot, exploring a lot, learning a lot. Beyond that, it's experiential. A lot of having something to say, having things to draw from, just comes through living. So if you are constantly watching movies, playing games, reading books, but that's all you do, you don't go out for walks, you don't connect with people, you're missing out on a very large part of what you need to be filling your life with and filling your mind with experientially, socially, emotionally, sociologically, psychologically, in all these other ways. You need to have those things to draw from. That's why I'm able to sit down and I can picture this kind of a family environment, because my family, as my kids have been growing and as I've gotten older, and I'm going to have more that are going to be things that I can draw from later in life as I write, but all of those become points in time and personality and relationships that I can pull from for different family relationships. To me, this is, 10, 12 years ago, early parenting, kind of mixed with some of my children now that are, older. But that idea of going to work and coming home just so exhausted every day, but also knowing that you've got to step up. You've got to cook the meal because mom may not be able to. She's had a rough day too. She's been trying to take care of a sick kid or, one with a rash or, there's so many things that can come up. But that's where I'm drawing from this. That's why I'm not having to stop, look up references, do research. I know this person. I know this experience. And I know what this is like. And so that's what I'm drawing from. So in your writing, if you're writing situations that you don't know or haven't experienced, you can still do that. Research does help quite a bit. But even better than that, experience it. Go visit people that are going through this. If you have family and friends that may be the right age or demographic or lifestyle or whatever else for something that you're going to write, see if you can spend time with them. Just observe. Just people watch. And you're going to be able to learn a lot from seeing these things around you. Anyways, a little sidetrack because of one of my lovely children. So Dad quickly took off his coat and set to work making something for the family to eat. Adam felt awkward. Now, there's a lot of things that I have heard as rules for writing over the years, and some are very good advice. Some can be broken, but everything really depends on the situation. You don't want to... How do I put this? There's all the adages like, show, don't tell. Like, I don't need you to tell me what's happening. Show it to me through the character's emotions. Show it to me through the actions and the interactions. Don't say, this person feels this way, or this person is, performing this function. Just show it to me. Like, Dad set off to work, making something for the family to eat. Adam stood around looking at his feet for a little bit, trying not to make eye contact so he wouldn't get roped into work. He didn't want to look at his mom or his sister, who were obviously dealing with their own thing. His hand shook a little. He could still feel the sweat coming down, and his mind was racing with thoughts of the insects that had turned to zombies. Like, I'm not saying he felt awkward, but I'm showing it to you in those ways. In a larger, longer format, I would probably do that. In the shorter format, I may still do that. But there are times, especially when I'm writing for a younger audience, where I will just come out and say it. For my kids, they're very intuitive with their reading, and for them, they can pick up a lot of things, but not always, and not all children can. I work with a lot of students that have different disabilities. Many of them are on the spectrum and don't recognize or understand social cues. So for them, if I'm talking about all those things that Adam's doing, they may or may not understand that what's happening is him feeling awkward. They may not connect to that social cue. So sometimes in my writing, I'm writing to that audience. I'm writing to a younger audience that may not understand all those things yet either. Sometimes they can relate to it, sometimes they can't. And so once more, I was going to say yet again, or once more, I need to cut that out. So writing Adam felt awkward is okay. It doesn't always have to be showing. Even though that was a rule that I understood was a very hard, fast rule. You never tell, you always show. You know what? The more books I've read, the more often I can see cases where authors did just tell, and sometimes I'm appreciative that they did, because not telling and going into all the other things slows down the pacing. This is a short story format. There are places where I'm going to do this, but I may come back later, and as I'm reading through it, if it feels like it needs more, I need more detail, I need more connection to what Adam's going through by describing the things around him, I may come back and flesh this out further. For right now, I'll put this here, and as I'm writing, I'm going, oh, do I want to do that? I kind of want to expand on it, and I kind of want to show more than I want to tell. But I'm going to put it there because this is helping me get straight to the point. Because I want him to feel awkward, but I don't want that to be a lingered on point. But now I've also lost the train of thought that I was on, so because I'm talking to y'all. That's okay. I'm going to jump back into it. Anyways, but this is some of the thought process of why I'm making this choice. So for all those other authors out there, they're like, "Oh, you're doing it wrong." No, I'm not. I'm breaking one of the rules that you've probably learned, but there are times when it's okay to break the rules for different reasons. And so it comes down to how your story feels, what's working for you. The rules are there to act as guides and to help your writing improve and get better, so you're not relying on lazy writing tropes and inability to visualize for your audience. And so they're there for a purpose, but they're also not supposed to be there to hold you back if there's a different way you feel you should do it or that can improve your story. So for right now, I will leave this and we'll move on. Okay, so Dad quickly took off his coat and set to work making something for the family to eat. Adam felt awkward. And I'm going to put as soon as I go off on that whole thing, I'm going to put a little bit in because I just need a little bit more. Adam felt awkward. He quietly took his shoes off at the door so that he wouldn't upset anyone, and was attempting to sneak by and up to his room when his dad saw him. I don't want that. When his dad walked up behind him and began to mime, or began to shadow, every movement that Adam made. This is a defense mechanism. So, yet again, I apologize for the yet agains. I'm going to continue to work on that when the camera's on me. For me, when I was in these types of situations, when I had points that were tense in my relationship, when work was overbearing, when we were having problems with neighbors, when my home became extremely uncomfortable and people were having a hard time being around each other, my defense mechanism was to tell jokes, to get goofier, to be more interactive with my family. Not out of necessarily a conscious desire to, sometimes it was, but more that's just my defense mechanism. That helps diffuse the situation for me and the people around me, especially those that I love in my home. And so I get goofier and goofier until it became so weird and goofy that my family couldn't help but react in a way that was engaging, or, it took away the scary, especially for the children, where it's like, oh wow, it is tense, but Dad's being weird, so I guess we'll focus on that for a moment and then it'll be better. So his dad walks up behind him and began to shadow every movement that Adam made. He couldn't turn because Dad, and I'm speaking past tense, Adam turned and his father remained behind him. He started to speak, but his dad blurted out at the same time, cutting him off. He raised an arm, and his dad, and his dad's shadow on the wall raised an arm. Adam started to grin, even though he was trying very hard not to. He walked straight into a wall, or I'll say up to a wall. He didn't actually run into it. Up to a wall, turned quickly and said, "Dad!" "What?" responded Adam's father, mimicking his tone. "Stop being so grumpy and help me cook." And being just like my children. But I don't wanna, said Adam, semi-flopping. Too bad, said Father, flopping, or fully flopping, with his tie askew. I don't want to adult anymore. You gotta cook the dinner. Dad, repeated. I'm just going to leave that there. Dad. Nah, I'll do it. Repeated Adam. Stop being a kid. Don't wanna, said, or don't wanna. I'm gonna be a kid from now on, and you have to go to work and take care of everything. Yes, we're getting into the horrible language. In general, it's probably better to say don't want to, but when I'm doing dialogue, I want it to sound and be written the way people sound. There are times where I will correct this and I'll read it in those ways, but I'll have it as correct English. But when I'm doing the first draft, I just want it to sound the way I'm hearing it in my head. So I can come back later and make the changes. By the way, that's my mantra if you haven't caught on. Adam leaned against the wall, to laugh. Okay, Adam leaned against the wall and started to laugh, partially out of nervous embarrassment, as his dad began to throw a full-sized tantrum, just the way he and his sister used to. By the way, this is a lot of fun as a parent. When you start acting the way your kids do with their worst behavior, and you're doing it in jest, and they know it's in jest, to kind of call out some of the behavior and how absurd it can be sometimes, it usually helps break up any tension. As his father continued, laughter began rising from the family room. Which felt wonderful until, because there's always an until, Benny began crying again. Dad, knowing not to press his luck, back to the kitchen, holding Adam's hand, and they set about getting frozen meatballs in the oven and a pot of water boiling on the stove for the noodles. And I could mention, oh, and by the way, they had to do sauce, and they pulled out the Parmesan. You'll fill that in. So they got the meatballs in the oven, started water boiling on the stove for the noodles. I need a yoink. Okay, there we go. I must. Yet again, proper language must. Talked language, I have to go to work and take care of everything. Because I must go to work doesn't fit quite so well in the middle of a tantrum. So they got a pot of boiling water on the stove and noodles. The time they sat down to eat, the mood was a little... trying to think of how Adam was feeling. How to describe that. Basically what I'm trying to say is that the mood was better. His dad had broken the tension. They were still kind of quiet and dealing with their stuff. It was busy. It was hectic. But they didn't have to be scared as much anymore. And so... I want to say it feels warmer, but I'm trying to think of a better way of describing that at this time. By the time they sat down to eat, Adam was feeling connected to his family again. His dad, or his mother, was smiling. This is still kind of from Adam's perspective. So mother was smiling. And dad was asking everyone about their day. Adam brought up the crawdad, or brought up Sadhu catching 5 crawdads in one go, but didn't say anything about the zombies. Just double checking. Okay. Okay. His dad continued asking around the table, and everyone got sillier and sillier with their responses. Adam felt a darkness closing in. He kept retreating into his headspace, and a pain was forming in his chest as his mind kept getting stuck on a loop of the headless. Gotta go back, check names. Jerome. Okay, see how that just went dark and the mood's back down. Yet again, I don't want it to go too far. So he sees his dad pulling the driveway from work, runs home, have a moment where we see a family dynamic. They have dinner. We meet mom and the two siblings with the baby and get some fun, and with some dark undertones bringing back the issue that was introduced at the beginning of the story. Okay, so we got that. And that actually went quite a bit. But this felt important to flesh out further, because it really was important that he have that moment where we are introducing what the family dynamic is. Not just what it's become, but but where it's actually at now. Or excuse me, not just where it's become, where it's at now, but also what it normally is. So before the family conflicts, before whatever stress is causing the quiet in the family, how was it before? How were they connecting? You know, just this little moment with his family. And for me, these are fun moments. These are happy moments. I hope that those come through for my audience. With many of my test readers, these types of scenes do resonate as well, but they definitely, for me as an author, resonate. And this brings me the brightness. So even if I'm not telling jokes, these still bring the humor and the fun and the lightheartedness back into what I'm trying to deal with in my story with the content. So he's going back, and it's gotten dark again. All right. So now the next section. Based on the time I have tonight, I'm going to try and get through... You know what? I'm going to leave this one a little bit shorter tonight. I've still been going about 46 minutes, but I'm going to cut it off here. This one went really well. I feel like it's got some good progress. I've got 3 sections left that need to be addressed. I want to focus in on this next one, though, because... Or actually the next 2. Tell you what, I will do this one right now. I do want to start this one fresh, though, because when they sit down for the conversation, I need to be able to really focus on that and bring the power. So this would be normally a good time for me to get a break. Yet again, I say yet again, as I have said in previous videos, when I'm recording this late, I've got to still get some sleep, get some work done. So this is about all the time I can take tonight. I'm hoping to have some more time tomorrow and Saturday, though, to try and finish this up and get these posted rather than making you wait a full week in between each one. I am still doing home repairs, though, trying to get more varnishing on the cabinets and stuff done. And I've got other projects that I do need to keep up on, not just this one that I'm recording. So I still may only be able to do this once a week. I'm hoping you'll be able to still connect and enjoy this, even though they're a little more spaced out coming out. But yeah, I'm going to stop right now. I'll end this here. I'll come back and I will hit this fresh. This may take 3 more times, just because these are such important scenes. But I'm just going to get down this first draft. And then when we go through the second and the third draft and a polish, those may all happen in one sitting, or they may take a little bit longer. I don't know. This is a new format for me to try and record this and talk as I go. It does make the writing take much, much longer. Normally I can get a lot more down in this amount of time. But it's coming out, and hopefully you're enjoying hearing about the process as we go. So, thank you again. I've got to look up the camera and kind of spy myself. I'll get the hand wave at some point. So, there we are. Have a great evening.